Reagan once said that government is the problem. Too much government is what essentially drives down the American people into a state of poverty. Too big of a government is what this nation suffers from. I've never been one to articulate my politics, even though I do know what I believe in firmly. I've wondered a lot of times, what is this nation's calling? What are we supposed to do in the end times? Are we involved? Or are we just sitting in the background doing nothing? And for us as believers, I believe this, that we need to be active until the very end, whether we are raptured up or if we are persecuted to the last person on earth. Whichever case it may be, we should always be fighting for what is right in God's eyes, not sitting on the sidelines doing nothing. See, that was the trouble for many Christians in the Republican Party for many years. They sat back and let the Rhino establishment just have its way. The Rhino establishment merged with the Democratic Party. In other words, they believed in greed and money rather than doing what's right for the American people. And it's wrong. It's horrible. You know of these officials in government that want to pocket their own gain and not pocket for the American people. Give me all this money and I'll give you a favor. Give me all this money and I'll make you a deal. Give me all this money and I'll make my area a rich area. And the problem with government is it's full of bureaucrats who care more about themselves than they do of the American people. I mean, this is exactly what happened in the days of Elijah, in the days of Ahab and Jezebel. Now, you saw the forefront of sin of Baal, obviously. But there's also a factor in the background that people don't realize, is that they had an understanding with the nation of Judah, their own Uniparty, you could say. Judah and Israel were supposed to be separate from one another. They weren't meant to be on friendly terms, but through the years of Ahab and Jezebel, they started merging alliances and understandings with different groups of people, and they started to make tons and tons of money. They were having a huge financial trade empire. Archaeology states that fact as well. Ahab and Jezebel were very sharp individuals. We know that they were very sinful individuals that had done much wrong, but they were very sharp, especially in the political realm. And they were very bold in their ambitions. They, I believe, from archaeology and from historical records, their ambition was to probably take on the Assyrians and probably defeat the Assyrian Empire that was starting to emerge, because they had alliances with Syria. Now, when you read in Scripture, they had skirmishes with Syria, but after those skirmishes with Syria, they were starting to merge themselves with the Syrians. And in archaeological history, there was a major battle between Syria, Israel, and the Assyrians. Now, Israel ultimately lost this battle because they had a huge ton of chariots. They were a very mighty chariot nation. They had major weapons for that time. But in this battle against Assyria, that's not mentioned in Scripture, but it is mentioned in historical accounts. They were defeated. Israel was defeated by the Assyrians. I believe when you think about it, archaeology puts the pieces together, and when you start to place everything together, the picture is painted as this: Israel's ambition was so high that they were really ready to take on one of the mightiest emerging factions of the world, and that was the Assyrians. It was either going to be Israel or the Assyrians. And Ahab and Jezebel were doing everything in their power to position Israel as the dominant force in the Middle East, in the Levant area. Ultimately, it seems to indicate in the historical records that the Syrians turned against Israel. And for whatever reason, they may have lost the battle against Assyria. And returning home, Israel had a falling out with the Syrians. And that's when Ahab died, because his ambition was too great, and his downfall was ultimately met in the end. Now that skirmish between Israel and Syria is talked about in Scripture. Let's read about that.
And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as thy horses. And Jehoshaphat said unto the king of Israel, Inquire, I pray thee, at the word of the Lord today. Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 men, and said unto them, Shall I go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And they said, Go up, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. And Jehoshaphat said, Is there not here a prophet of the Lord besides, that we might inquire of him? And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, There is yet one man, Micaiah the son of Imlah, by whom we may inquire of the Lord. But I hate him, for he doth not prophesy good concerning me, but evil. And Jehoshaphat said, Let not the king say so. Then the king of Israel called an officer and said, Hasten hither Micaiah the son of Imlah. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat the king of Judah sat each on his throne, having put on their robes, in a void place in the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets prophesied before them. And Zedekiah the son of Chenaanah made him horns of iron, and he said, Thus saith the Lord, With these shalt thou push the Syrians until thou have consumed them. And all the prophets prophesied so, saying, Go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the king's hand. And the messenger that was gone to call Micaiah spake unto him, saying, Behold now, the words of the prophets declare good unto the king with one mouth. Let thy word, I pray thee, be like the word of one of them, and speak that which is good. And Micaiah said, As the Lord liveth, what the Lord saith unto me, that will I speak. So he came to the king, and the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear? And he answered him, Go and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. And the king said unto him, How many times shall I adjure thee, that thou tell me nothing but that which is true in the name of the Lord? And he said, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills as sheep that have not a shepherd. And the Lord said, These have no master. Let them return every man to his house in peace. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, Did I not tell thee that he would prophesy no good concerning me, but evil? And he said, Hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, Who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this manner, and another said on that manner. And there came forth a spirit, and stood before the Lord, and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, Wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, Thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee. But Zedekiah the son of Chenaanah went near and smote Micaiah on the cheek, and said, Which way went the Spirit of the Lord from me, to speak unto thee? And Micaiah said, Behold, thou shalt see in that day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself. And the king of Israel said, Take Micaiah, and carry him back unto Amon the governor of the city, and to Joash the king's son, and say, Thus saith the king, Put this fellow in the prison, and feed him with bread of affliction and with water of affliction, until I come in peace. And Micaiah said, If thou return at all in peace, the Lord hath not spoken by me. And he said, Hearken, O people, every one of you. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat the king of Judah went up to Ramoth Gilead. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself and enter into the battle, but put thou on thy robes. And the king of Israel disguised himself and went into the battle. But the king of Syria commanded his 32 captains that had rule over his chariots, saying, Fight neither with small nor great, save only with the king of Israel. And it came to pass, when the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, that they said, Surely it is the king of Israel. And they turned aside to fight against him. And Jehoshaphat cried out. And it came to pass, when the captains of the chariots perceived that it was not the king of Israel, that they turned back from pursuing him. And a certain man drew a bow at a venture, and smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness. Wherefore he said unto the driver of his chariot, Turn thine hand, and carry me out of the host, for I am wounded. And the battle increased that day, and the king was stayed up in his chariot against the Syrians, and died at even. And the blood ran out of the wound into the midst of the chariot. And there went a proclamation throughout the host about the going down of the sun, saying, Every man to his city, and every man to his own country. So the king died, and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. And one washed the chariot in the pool of Samaria, and the dogs licked up his blood, and they washed his armor according unto the word of the Lord which he spake. Now the rest of the acts of Ahab, and all that he did, and the ivory house which he made, and all the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Ahab slept with his fathers, and Ahaziah his son reigned in his stead.
It's a very telling statement that the prophet gave when he said this, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills, as sheep that have not a shepherd. And the Lord said, These have no master. Let them return every man to his house in peace. This battle was the turning point in the history of Israel, and I'm going to explain why. Israel and Judah, even though these two nations had split from one another, they were both still formidable forces in their own right. Both of them were capable of handling their own against many armies. Well capable. But over the years, many battles and skirmishes had slowly winded them down, and they were getting pounded and pounded and pounded, and rebellions were happening. Moab was rebelling. Edom was rebelling. All these nations around them were rebelling. Syria was once maybe controlled by Israel, and maybe in their skirmishes They would have a disagreement, and then there would be times where Syria would have an understanding with Israel, and maybe in their wisdom sought alliances every once in a while. But the turning point was this battle. Because Israel had many chariots. They were a powerhouse of chariots. But he says this, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills. Upon the hills. I want you to think about it. From then on, when you start reading in the book of Kings and 2 Kings, Israel and Judah were then defending their cities. They were defending their cities on the hills. They were no longer powerhouses with chariots. Think about it. The powerhouse of chariot armies were now going to be scattered upon the hills. And God said, these have no master, because they don't serve him. God is the shepherd. God was the one who made Israel and Judah powerhouses in the Middle East. But all Israel was scattered upon the hills. Israel and Judah was the Uniparty. The Uniparty of an understanding, building trade with one another, commerce. Israel and Judah wouldn't have such an alliance unless there was money to be made. But at that point, when Ahab died, the alliance was pretty much strained after that, because a generation later, Jehu took over and ultimately shattered that alliance once and for all. There was no Uniparty, so to speak, and Judah was left defending its nation in the hills with no master. Think about it. They had chariots as well. They had an army formidable as well. They ruled over nations as well. But the lying spirit said, go to Ramoth Gilead. Ramoth Gilead, a very important region in that time. Ultimately, it was the area where Jehu was stationed at, and he went and took out the descendants of Ahab. But as a powerhouse, Israel was no more. You see in the sculptures and the carvings of the Assyrian tablets, the kings of Israel bowing before the Assyrians after this, once formidable and mighty, now bowing before the Assyrian masters, a sheep with no master, hiding in the hills, trying to defend their land now. As for this day in America, we have politicians and rulers and leaders. They don't govern by wisdom, but govern America by profit and money for themselves and not for their constituents. What can you do for my people is what your regional leaders should be doing. But that's not what your leaders are doing, at least many of them. We have a few good leaders in America still, but the Uniparty only answers to money, the god of money, and not God himself. When you look at your coins, America has turned its back on "In God We Trust." It's now, we trust in money. And money will get us out of the situation. The world was created by God, not by money. And if these politicians would realize that, who is ultimately the ruler, they would be far more wiser people ruling and governing this nation, you wouldn't have these wars for greed. And I say this out of truth. People know it's true. I don't expect to get awards for saying such things because we know that these things are true. They trust in their horses and their chariots. They trust in their money. They trust in the resources they have to make their military the mightiest on earth. But if you don't have God on your side, all of your horses and chariots are of naught. There is no wisdom in fighting and killing and murdering and plundering other nations for your own gain. It just makes you a tyrant. To the leaders of this day, here is wisdom. Put aside your weapons and make peace around the world. If you do not pursue peace, peace will come to you in the end, not by a dove, but by the vulture. And remember that. We want peace to come in love, not by death. God bless you, my brothers and sisters.